not running well today. I'm just trying different fixes as this keeps cutting me off. So, um, you know, I'm trying what I know as far as how to fix Twitch goes, but I don't know everything. So, I perhaps will not be able to permanently resolve this issue. But hopefully, now that I'm back, it'll stay. I'm honestly just crossing my fingers at this point. Thanks for your patience, guys. Um, let's just see. Yeah, we've got our green light here. So, all right. Well, I will talk, and if it cuts off again, I'll just cut off and disconnect. And oh, thank you, David. David is there in the chat with some amazing emojis there. Thank you so much. Cool, guys. So, where was I? I was talking about games are due by May 4th. So you'll have 1 week from today to finish your project. And by finish, again, what I am looking for is a build that would be a first playable or an alpha. So this doesn't have to be polished. This doesn't have to be bug free. What it does need to be is something that resembles a game. So we're looking for just the bare bones basics of a player controller, some mechanics, some goals, some challenges. And in the next week or so, you might want to put some cycles on getting some audio and UI working in there. So that's something I'm going to talk about today. And I wanted to play your projects and then also show you the project that Dan and I are working on for this challenge to give you an example of where I'd like you to get to submit a build. I see Davis saying being able to win. Yes, that is definitely something that would be part of a basic first playable. And of course, when we say goals, mechanics, and challenges, if I'm talking about being able to win, I'm talking about a goal. And the game needs to know that you've reached the goal and give you some kind of condition or state that indicates, yes, you have achieved the goal we set out for you. In other words, you've won the game. So absolutely, and that's a very astute comment because I think that we often get into situations where we're like working on all this stuff and let's do ragdoll physics, which is super fun, and it's easy to get distracted with all the fun stuff we can do and forget to create a win state in the game. Um, my hope is that these conflict resolutions that I'm doing is not what's causing the connection blips. Um, so as I'm just fixing this merge situation with David's project, I am going to check out Emmy's project. By that point, hopefully David's will be somewhat resolved, and I'll hop in David's next. So David, that does give you a few more minutes if there's anything else you want to tweak. I pulled Emmy's and it was looking pretty good. So I think I will start with that project. And I do have it loaded in here. So let's pull this game up and we'll make this look a little bit bigger. Cool. So one thing that I immediately observed is this has made progress from before, and Emmy has worked with the enemy AI that I demoed, and it looks like the majority of the enemies in here are um, moving, which is fantastic. You know, the fact that they're boxes is like that's a final thing you would do at the end and just put something else in there. If you wanted them to animate and walk, it might take a couple hours to get that wired up, but it's much more important to get the functionality for how they kind of move and work in the scene. And I think it's fantastic that all these guys are moving around. So I throw the toilet paper, it hits the guy, and it explodes, blowing them to the side, which is just amazing. I'm such a fan of this. Um, I noticed that the explosions are working correctly now. The previous version of the game, there was a bug where there was like an endless spawn of toilet paper, and now obviously that's been resolved. This is great. Um, this, to me, is what I would call a first playable. It's a really good first playable because it's fun and all of the basic game systems are here. Um, it's lacking a HUD display, so we don't have points yet. We don't have UI. But in the grand scheme of things, the thing I think is really strong about this project and what I'm so impressed by is the fact that Emmy focused on the things that are important to implement first. So it's nice to have UI and HUD, but you really got to have your basic gameplay in before you start elaborating and creating like framing and like a storyline and figuring out exactly how many points you need to win and things like that. You know, you got to get this situation set up first. And I'm just really impressed that this is set up like this and feeling like the path from here to creating an alpha would be about just implementing a HUD and figuring out exactly how many of these you're trying to hit and what causes you to hit that fantastic win condition that David is talking about, which of course ultimately we would need, right? Like, how do I actually win this game? So just really enjoying. It's very fun. I wanted to show you guys while I was in this project, all good things to say. And Emmy, I know that you had some questions in here about how to get the sound effect to play when that toilet paper lands on the ground. And I looked at your script in the previous version of the project, and I'm going to try to sort this out for you guys on the cast real quick. Because my understanding here is that Emmy was hitting a classic problem, which is that the sound effect is attached to an object that's being destroyed before the sound effect could actually play. So I wanted to check out this toilet paper script here. And I believe that the original version of this script did actually have a sound effect line in it where I could pass in a reference to a sound effect. I believe it was up here. Explosion sound. And this explosion sound, Emmy, if I'm correct, it was the bug. Yep, exactly. Yeah. So Emmy is saying the sound effect line ended up being the reason why the object bugged. Yep, that's exactly right. I saw your version before you pushed this one. And I saw that same error, right? Like it was just endlessly spawning and spawning and spawning. And, you know, what is this bug? I did some investigating here. And I wanted to show you how to patch this back in so that we can still get the sound because there's just a little bit of finagling you have to do in this situation. So here's the deal. What's going on in this game? Here, I'll comment this out so we don't cause any more bugs. And what you have to manage in a game like this is you're spawning and destroying objects. So the way this game functions, when I click this button, the toilet paper effect, the toilet paper is a game object that's destroyed. And when it's around the moment when it's destroyed, the explosion effect is spawned. And so what you have to manage in a game like this, if you're managing effects and sound, is spawning and destroying things at the right moments. And what I saw in the previous version is that the sound was, I think, trying to reference an audio source that was not available. And it was also attached to the toilet paper, which was being destroyed before the sound could actually play. So here's how I would get that sound. Whoops, that's the wrong Visual Studio. Here's how I would get that sound to work. I would pass in a reference to not a game object, an audio source, explosion sound. I'm going to uncomment this out. And then we want it to play when we call explode. So, and Emmy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is where you were originally trying to play the sound. So I'll try putting this back in. Great. So Emmy is saying, yep, that's where I was playing the sound. Now, there's two things I need to do to make this work. One of them is, now that I'm playing that sound, I need to actually open up the object that has this script on it. This script is named toilet paper or TP, and that is actually attached to a prefab Emmy has that is being spawned. I think it's this toilet paper 2 variant, and I see that script attached to this prefab with now this empty reference field here where I would want that sound to play. And what's interesting about this is if you look at the scene, this is a classic example of using prefabs. If you look at this scene, that toilet paper is not actually there in the scene. So it's a little confusing when you get a bug like that, because typically when you get an error, it's relating with something you can click on in here. And you think of the things that you have in the scene as the only things that are going to be there in the game, and therefore you only click on this list when you're looking for options in the inspector. But when you spawn objects, you have this hidden set of objects that suddenly appear in the scene, and one of them is the toilet paper. So over here, I'm going to go ahead and add, whoops, that is definitely behind my head. Let's move that over here. We're going to add a audio source to this game object. I click add component and I go audio source. And then it looks like it came in rolled up. I unroll it. And I believe somewhere in here, Emmy does have an explosion sound. So I'm going to go ahead and patch this right into here. I can minimize it again to make it easier for me to navigate the inspector. I'm going to minimize everything I'm not using, actually. There we go. And then I need to drag the audio source. Whoop. That open back up. Go back. I need to drag this and drop it right here. Thinking about my usual default audio source settings, I also am going to come in here and click unclick play on awake. Because if I click on that, I believe that's going to play right when I click on the toilet paper. And of course, we don't want it making an explosion sound when I shoot. We want it to make an explosion sound when the toilet paper lands. So you guys can hear that making an exploding sound, yes. Ooh, it's too soon. But the nice thing is I don't have a bug in here, and the original bug in this situation was due to that reference to the audio source being empty on the toilet paper prefab. Now, I've got to solve the issue of the fact that the sound is playing too soon. And of course, that would be because I had play on awake checked, so I can uncheck that. But then now I'm like, okay, now it should work. I click and there's no sound at all. Looks like I'm buffering again. Hello. Just gonna continue to pull while I'm doing this. So my thing that I need to do here is think about what is causing the sound to play and why that thing would not work, given the situation I have. And what I realized is we have this code here, and at the end of this method explode, we're destroying the game object that the script is attached to. And that object is the toilet paper. So if you remember, I've got the audio source attached to the toilet paper, and which means I'm destroying the audio source as well. So I have an issue here where I want the toilet paper to disappear, but if I have the audio source attached to it, I'm also destroying my ability to play the sound that I wanted to play when I call explode. So, we have a couple workarounds for this. One option would be to attach the audio source to something else. Um, the other option is to delay how long it takes for the toilet paper to be destroyed. Um, so that was actually the approach I took when I was playing with this a little while ago. And here's a neat thing about the destroy method. You can actually just add a number here, and that is how many seconds that will click by before the game object is destroyed and cleaned up from the scene. So I'll show you what this looks like. Um, so I put that number in, and that's 5 seconds. So now I hear the sound, and the only issue is the toilet paper sits there for 5 seconds before it's destroyed. So I've got this. I'm okay, great, it's functioning, but weirdly enough, it's still there. Okay, cool. So now what do I do? Kind of thing. So, again, the other option is I could put the audio source on another game object that I'm not going to destroy. Let's actually put it on the player and we'll see if we can just pass it in that same way. Interestingly, there happens to be an empty audio source on the player now. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this, and then let's see if I can pass that to the prefab. It might not work because the prefab's outside of the scene. Yeah, it's not going to let me do it. Okay. So despite my aspiration of having the audio source be on the player, I'd have to do a little bit of coding workaround, and I have a couple options at my disposal. If I want to put that on the player and play it over there, what I can do here is instead of passing it in as a reference, I could go private. And then here in start, I could say explosion sound equals game object dot get component. Nope, sorry, dot find game object with tag. I'm going to find the player, and then I'm going to go get component, audio source, and then a semicolon. Now, keeping in mind, that could be any object, right? It doesn't have to be the player. I could create a utility object called audio manager, right? There's a lot of different ways that I can have sound sitting in the scene ready for me to play. So the key is just knowing where the sound is, what it's attached to, and how to reference that so I can play it at the right moment. So now that's going to just reference the sound in a different location and hopefully play it the way I want it to. I'm going to take this out because I do want this to just disappear when it lands, and we'll see if it plays this way. If that doesn't work, I do have one more solution for us that we can also do. So let's double check here. I'm going to actually take this off just so we don't get confused. Oh. Let's see if our player is tagged player before we do anything else. Cool. That was the issue there. I didn't hear anything. So my concern now is I'm like thinking maybe uh again I'm like destroying too soon before the game object has a chance to ask that other one to play. But let me actually just make sure that the uh, audio source is in there. Yeah, it's in there. And we only have one on the player, right? This is where the footsteps go. Got it. Yep. All right. So it's using that somewhere else in the game. Cool. So we can actually create an audio game object here that we would call something like audio manager. And let's see if we can actually use this one for this same purpose. So I'm going to put this here, and I may have introduced a bug by passing that in. So let's put that back to none. And we will actually go ahead and create a new tag so we can reference this. I'll tag that thing I just created as audio. So I'm going to hop back into, whoops, Emmy's game. And instead of player, let's audio, which is now going to reference the object I just created, which literally only just has that explosion sound on it. And let's see if I can get it to work. Of course, it played immediately because I've got play on awake checked. No one likes that. Let's check it out. Great. Okay. Hey, David, thanks for your assistance in troubleshooting that. Looks like we've got it working. That's really nice. So, that implementation can be really great because it's going to allow you to have a bunch of different audio sources loaded into your scene, and then you can play them and trigger them depending on what's happening in the game. You would need to do a little bit of organizing with this game object, this audio manager, to kind of figure out how you're going to reference each audio source and then play that one. Like you could create children and give each of the children a different name, and then use find game object.find to get those children. There's lots of ways of organizing it. But the key here is, the default assumption you come in with in a game like this is I want to attach the noise an object makes to that object, because that's how things kind of seem to work in real life. Like, when I hold this up and I hit it, this thing is the thing that's making that noise. But in a game, it's really arbitrary what is actually making the noise. And we can, of course, also talk about audios. I think it's an audio clip method called play clip at point, which you can also use to play a particular sound in stereo, so that instead of just hearing it sort of as a flat sound that comes out of the computer, it's either louder or quieter depending on how close you are to that point. So if you're interested, you can search play clip at point as well in the Unity API. I would just Google play clip at point. But for this game, honestly, I think that this works pretty well, and you don't need to do tons of audio design. It just needs to work some kind of way. And now that we've got this explosion audio running, I think this is just such a fantastic, fantastic first playable. And I would say to you, Emmy, even if this were what you submitted to us for April, that would be a massive accomplishment. And we will be taking lots of time in May, again, around polishing and developing, how you would take a project like this further. So let's check David's project, and I will go a bit past 5 today just because I had so many connection issues. So I'm going to give David some good feedback here and talk about a few other things. I'm noticing Dan is saying, I like this game. It has a lot of potential, and I just really agree with that. I think so much good stuff in this. I wanted to share with you guys. You know, let me see if I can find this for a second here. I'm gonna just put my face on while I pull up Slack because um, actually somebody at the Eline Media Studio shared a game that they said reminded that they were reminded of when they saw your game, Emmy. Because of course those guys are following along and they're pretty excited about what you guys are working on. So give me a second and I'll show you guys this. So yeah, so this is really like uh, one of the people who works at Eline Media actually linked me to this after, seeing I had posted a GIF of Emmy's game on the um, Make Room Twitter account and Facebook, and then also on the Slack for Eline Media. And our one of our game makers at the studio was like, "Oh my gosh, it reminds me of this game I saw on Reddit." And you guys check out this game. Like, I'm over the moon that this exists. And like maybe it's juvenile of me, but I just really love the idea of toilet paper as like a weapon in a video game. And this is amazing. Like, I mean, like you throw a pack of toilet paper and then like it explodes into massive amounts of toilet paper. I literally almost was like gonna honestly out to Emmy like you should make it like this. Like, you could do something even really crazy like where when you hit the people like they turn into toilet paper, but um anyway, it's a grand tradition of game making that you're joining into with um, making a game where you shoot toilet paper, apparently, because somebody else did this. And this is really impressive. Not only is this like a dope like physics simulator, but apparently this is also this apartment is like the exact apartment that's in Friends. If you guys have seen Friends, like totally random, but anyway, cool. So, very excited about all this with toilet paper. And yeah, these are just such a pain. I'm sorry that we're hitting all of these merge conflicts. It's really weird because I personally did not actually touch your project, David. So I'm not actually even sure uh, why it would be giving me a conflict here. So hopefully we'll be able to get these through pretty quickly. There's only like three or four more, and then I will be able to play. So, of course, in David's game, let's just see if I can play without resolving those. Okay, it looks like it's running. If we hit a bug, I will fix that stuff, but I don't know what that stuff is, and I'm hoping it's not part of your main gameplay loop here. So let's check out 3 Fortnights at Home. We saw this a couple weeks ago. We had some great stuff going on, and I think that there has been some polishing and some improvement here. So. Woof. Cool.
Hello, it's me, your dad. Did you hear about the news? You're supposed to stay home. I sent you $100. It should last you for 2 weeks.
You can hang up now. Okay. I'm hanging up on the dad. Sorry, Dad. All right, let's order some food. McVomit. Great. Ooh, fancy. All right, so I close that. Oh, man. This is such a good game. I want a mask. Okay. great. No dark web, probably best. Nope, because that will quit the game. F to turn off the phone. Cool, awesome. Let's read some of these. Awesome. Okay, this is very surrealist. I dig it. And it looks to me like the hunger is taking down a lot faster.
Hey, open the door.
Oh my god, it's so scary. Oh my god, what is it? Oh my god.
I'm going to kill you. Your food is here. Delivery.
Oh my god. What is it doing? I think it might have created a bug. Nope, I just did it. Spray it with Lysol. Oh my god! Oh my gosh, it just went away. Oh my god. This is so creepy. Okay, so I can put it, great. Ah, nice. Okay, dope. Ooh, there's meat there. I don't even know what to say about that, but again, very surreal. Uh-oh. Oh my gosh, they got moldy? Oh no, they made my hunger go down? Wait. Hold on. Does hunger 45 mean I'm like low on food or I'm low on hunger? That's an interesting question because I feel like if I have a higher number, then doesn't that mean I'm more hungry? But then when I ate the food, the hunger made it go down. But then I'm thinking maybe that's because it was green food. Okay, so let me order. I'm gonna order some food and eat it immediately, so I don't. Wait, where's my mask? Was that just a waste of money? I guess it's probably true. Can I eat this? But I want it. Uh-oh. Hurry, delivery man. That's creepy out there. Okay. Hopefully I don't die. Just watch this. Oh my god. I do not like that rabbit at all. Get away from me.
Hey, open the door. I'm going to kill you.
Oh my
I'm going
god.
to kill you.
Oh my god. Wait, where did my Lysol go? Did I use it up? Why aren't you tipping? Oh. I'm not tipping because last time it seemed like you couldn't click on the other ones and it seemed like the UI was broken last time, so I should tip next time. Let's do another one. I'll tip $2. Okay. Come on, McVomit. I think I'm in trouble now because I lost my bottle. Oh, I know. I need to order it. Okay. Yes, I really need that. I hope that comes before the bunnies return. What GPS? Oh, right. There we go. That's amazing. Okay. Cool. Okay, and the guy is coming. This is awesome. This has some amazing details in it. I'm really impressed with this. Oh, thanks, dude.
Here's your food.
I literally almost died, and I'm just like not even. Okay, yeah. So the green food made my hunger get worse. All right. Well, I better get more. I wonder if does he come faster when I tip more? Looks like probably yes. Drum brass. All right. I want more of this. I'm really scared of those. Let's get more food because I'm probably up. I'm probably gonna die. Okay, I have to wait. This is really good. This is really, really good. This is getting a lot more. Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
This is getting a lot more like I have a gameplay loop here. Like I'm managing resources and looking at. Okay, I gotta get more. I'm gonna die because I really stink fart. I did not manage the food very well when I was figuring out this loop.
Thank you so Here's much. Your food.
Bye. Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm almost gonna starve. Okay, more food, please. Nathan Messy. I really think that these names are definitely the result of arrays. David, is that true? Let us know if yes, because I feel like Dan had done that whole thing about arrays, and now we've got lots of fun random stuff happening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Now I'm super curious if I'm going to be able to use 2 of these. Like, uh-oh. There's something weird with that one. Maybe I'm not supposed to order 2 at once. Interesting. Yes. Delivery. Oh, thank God, I almost died. Oh my God,
Here's
it's
your
coming.
food.
I hate those. Ah! No. Okay. Oh my God, I am gonna die of hunger in this game. This is a great game, David. I'm super impressed. Dan is like, this is so good. Oh, okay. Yeah, something weird happened with that. Maybe there's 2 there. No. I am gonna say probably that I'll just stand here until the hunger expires just so we can see the starvation condition. Someone sick could come. Oh my gosh. You mean so like you could win? How do you win though? Like I feel like you just survive. I'm not actually sure how to win the game. I guess I'll order more food. Clue me in on surviving. Oh, I see. So we have a certain amount of time that we have to survive. Okay. That is interesting. Great. How do I know how long it's been? I feel like maybe the game is under the hood keeping track of how long I've been playing and this predetermined length of time of the fortnight. It's 3 fortnights at home. I know that's the name of the game. So, oh, my food is here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Here's your food.
Oh, I was so hungry. It's just making me think that maybe we would want to see a thing on here that was showing how long it's been. So that we can know, like, how close am I getting to the end of the fortnight. And the other thing I think that you'll commonly do in a game like this, where the objective is to survive for a certain amount of time, is make it get gradually more and more and more difficult. So that there's more things I need to click on and more of those rabbits coming in. Now, one thing I will say in this game, and of course, this is David's game, and so David's aesthetic is what it is. And I don't know that he's going to change it off of like a creepy Bugs Bunny. But obviously, if you wanted to make this be like an online game that you were publishing, and you were like, this is a game about the pandemic, the obvious thing to do there would be to make that be a mesh that was like, that's actually like the virus showing up to come infect you. And the way that you could do a health kind of attack kind of threat would be it comes in and sits on top of you like that. And if it's on you for like more than a certain amount of time, then you get the virus and you die. And that would really, I think, heighten the horror element of this, which is fundamentally about this fear. And of course, I'm saying like with David's aesthetic is for it to be a bunny, but it would be consistent with the theme if you made that be something virusy. So he's saying I implemented TV games. Let's check this out. Oh, object reference set not set to an instance of an object. So I don't know how to get into it. Maybe there's something that needs to be passed in. Click on the couch. All right, ready to play? Why? Yes. Yay, Green Man, go! Okay. Wow. Awesome. Wow, this is like uh oh my god. Oh my god, I died of hunger while I was playing video games. Too real. Too real, David. Oh my gosh. So, uh, that was amazing. I am very impressed with this. I overall want to say that this to me is more what I would categorize as an alpha build for a game. And that is because we have all of the key systems implemented. We've got the phone, we've got the delivery people. We now have the sort of jump scare type horror-esque threat that you have to fight. And we have this like other distraction thing we can do on the TV. And and David's saying there's other things that can happen in this as well, which include sick people showing up. So for me, this is incredibly successful. It's such an improvement on what I saw a couple weeks ago. And if I were to keep publishing this, it would be about making it easier to use so that I understand what I can do and just giving more gameplay, more interactions, more threat, more tension, just making it harder so that these cycles start to become things I'm running with certain kinds of strategies. And that would actually become a fantastic beta for a horror game about the pandemic. So this is just unbelievable. David, I'm really impressed with this. Seeing the evolution from what it was before to what it is now gives me a massive amount of waiting for buffering. I will not talk anymore until my feed returns. Hopefully, it doesn't take too long. There we are. Um, I'm just so impressed with you as a game maker, and I often think that, oof, okay. Hopefully I'm back and you guys can hear me. Um, I wanted to say specifically about David's type of game making, which is that um, David, I've noticed with your games in typically at the beginning it looks crazy and a lot of people are reacting of like what is this? And I sometimes have that reaction too of like what's he going for? I really don't get it. And as the game kind of evolves and moves forward, it becomes more and more clear what the central idea is and what the central fun of the game is. And, I would contrast that a lot with Emmy's game, where with Emmy's game, it's like sort of immediately easy to figure out what's going on. And we're like, oh, I really love this. It's so appealing immediately. And, both sort of styles of development are super valuable for different reasons. And, anybody out there who's a game maker like David, and to you, David, as well, if you have an artistic vision of like, I really want to make this atmospheric horror game, and I know how the gameplay is going to run, you should never listen to people who are like, this sucks, I don't get it. Just have the patience to be waiting and giving people the product once it's got in it what you need it to have in it for the whole thing to work. And I think sometimes your projects just have to evolve to a certain point before all the pieces click into place. So for both of these projects, I'm just like really excited to keep working on them. And I would say uh, some suggestions for things you guys could work on moving forward. Just to recap, I'll visit Emmy's game first. And Emmy, in your project, I would be looking for some UI that would be framing what I'm doing here in terms of points or some kind of objective that I'm trying to achieve in throwing toilet paper at people. So I believe that Dan has done a really nice tutorial of using text and UI elements to reflect things that you have in the code of your game. So if you need input on that, you could check out the buffering. Cool. Let's check my quality. Terrible. All right. So I don't know if I got cut off there, but what I was trying to say is check out the YouTube channel for Make Room if you want to see Dan's tutorial on how to wire up some UI for this. I think Dan's tutorial is pretty good in being general enough that you could extrapolate what he instructed in that tutorial to what you're doing in this game. So definitely head to the YouTube channel and check that out. Dan, if you're on the chat and you happen to be able to find that video, I think I've got it there on our channel. Um, link us in the chat to your video on text and UI. If it's not there uploaded yet, it may still need to be uploaded. I'll share that with you, Emmy, soon. But we do have some really nice materials on getting a HUD going. So I would focus on that. And then maybe now that I've wired up this audio situation with the audio manager object here with this audio source, you might use that as a basis to build out some further audio design and play other kinds of sounds in this level. The bare bones situation of this, of course, you might want background music. Um, and then if you're doing a menu music as well. I'll push these changes after the cast is done so I don't pull bandwidth. So for David's game, I would say great, dancing, I'll find it. Excellent. Um, for David's game, the suggestion I would make here is if you are here trying to survive for three fortnights, and I don't remember if there was a tutorial. Yeah, there's no tutorial page yet, which is, you know, that's fine. We don't need tutorials at this stage. But I would say some UI element, whether it's inside the phone or on the HUD, that indicates, you need to survive for 3 weeks. And using maybe one of those sliders to indicate where you're at. The help app is a tutorial. Great. All right, let's check the help app before I make any more comments because I didn't see that.
Hello, it's me.
Oh my gosh, terrifying. Don't tip people. Make sure a bad person comes and gets you. Oh my gosh. So there's some scary stuff going on in this that is even further. Great. Dan, thank you for sharing that in the chat. That's for Emmy. So, any case, I would still say a UI element in a game that tracks my progress along the overall trajectory of the goal I'm trying to achieve in the game, which is survive, I think would be really useful. So I would think about doing something like that just so people know where they're at. Because the only moment when I broke out of my flow in the gameplay was when I was like, oh, okay, I've seen most of what the game can do. Cool. And then I was sort of like, okay, I'm going to stop. And I think if I saw a UI element that was like, don't stop, you're almost, you got to last for a little bit longer. That's when I'm going to understand that it's worthwhile to keep playing and that more and more and more things are going to start happening. So, corresponding with an idea of having like a timeline that's like, oh, you need to survive for 3 weeks. I would also suggest finding ways of generating more and more threatening interactions and making the game get progressively harder. In other words, a difficulty curve as the timeline progresses. So those whatever those rabbits end up being in the game, having those show up more and more often, or more different kinds of things like that that you have to spray. More sick people coming, or them being more likely to come every time a delivery person comes. Those are all ways that you could make this get progressively more and more scary and difficult and challenging for you to actually win the game. So, some of that would be what I would focus on. And overall, guys, what I'm looking for, we'll send you guys some emails, and I'll have Dan comment on this on Wednesday. But, we're looking for you guys to submit a build. And that would just be submitting a zip file through the portal on the site, which will be open. I'll probably try to open that sometime this week. And then once we've gathered your builds and the builds from the other studio, if any of them are submitting, we will play the games on the cast and just talk about how the April challenge went. And along with that, then we'll say, we're going to clean slate into May, and you'll have a choice, which is, take this game and keep working on it for another month, which is super available to you and encouraged. We're really just at the beginning of the process if you were going to make this into a fully fledged game. Um, your other option would be to say, since we're doing a month of polishing in May, I have a game that I've already made with Make Room that I want to take to that next level. We've had talks in the past with the Elementals team about finishing that game. I know David is really proud of the two-player split screen third-person game, so that's a possibility of one that we could work on. As far as games that Emmy has worked on, Return of Ted is still there in the cloud and is a great project for us to take to that next level with really excellent UI and maybe some more game systems in addition to the bread power up that we did, where when you collect it, you go faster. So all of those possibilities will be an open slate for you guys in May. But our goal in May will be to get you guys in a situation where you could actually see yourselves publishing a game on itch.io, which, okay, seems like we should be back. Okay. Uh, I hope you guys can hear this. You know, sometimes when it buffers like that, it cuts off like half of what I've just said. So I'll rewind what I was talking about when it cut off just to make sure I get the message across. Um, the thing I was trying to wrap up by saying is um, the goal overall, once we're done with this April challenge, will be for you guys to tweak and polish a game project of your choice to publish on itch.io, which I'm showing here in a browser. So, if you're interested in starting to think about this, what kind of game would I like to offer on itch? Um, you know, this would be a great time to make a decision about what you're going to publish, whether it's this game that you worked on in April, which I think is actually a really great game to publish here because like people want to play games about the pandemic right now, and I think that you could get some traction in publishing a game that's related to all of this stuff that's happening. But you don't have to. So I was saying before I got cut off that any game you guys have worked on with us, or even any other game that you have, any game project that already exists as an alpha or first playable is a candidate for being polished and published on itch. I see David saying, I made sure to get royalty free models, which is fantastic. One of the things we'll be thinking about in May is how do you give credit to people when you download things from the asset store? Um, what are some of the considerations that go into actually, professionally publishing a game like this? So, it might be benefit you guys just to check this and see what are some of the games on here. I always like to look at the top games. David, you might be interested in checking out some of the horror games that are on here. Um, but there's just a lot of stuff, right? There's dating sims, there's Unity games, there's all kinds of stuff on itch. And it's just a really great place to let people have access to your work. So, before we start this, of course, you'll have one more week of development before you submit your project. So I would say, address a couple of the objectives I gave you today and anything else you guys want to kind of wrap up. And, submitting it is just a milestone. We won't cut you off. We'll be excited to keep working on that project if it's something you want to do. And hopefully, we'll be taking it to that next level. And the last thing I'll say is we are really lucky to have someone like Dan as part of our team because if you guys have been tuning in on Wednesday, you'll know that one of Dan's particular skills is in this realm of polishing and making games look really satisfying and fun to interact with. He did a really great cast last week about some interesting ways of adding juice to your game things like particle effects and cool UI animations that really, really make your game look more professional just with a little bit of coding and tweaking. And it's that kind of coding and tweaking that we'll be focusing on. Um, the other side to that is thinking about really how to make the gameplay feel fun, which I'm a really big fan of working. So, um, you know, how hard should it be? How many enemies should there be? What should the numbers look like? Is also something that we can start talking about once we have these first playables or alphas sort of in the pipeline and we're ready to go to that next stage. So that would be things like how many enemies should Emmy put in her toilet paper level? Should we have an enemy spawner? And if so, how many enemies should shoot out of the spawner and how often? Um, Tweaking those numbers can really change your experience of a game. So that is the plan. I'm going to just offer a blanket apology for the poor connection issues we had today. Um, I have no idea why it's doing that. My setup is the same as always, and sometimes it works flawlessly. So, um, crossing my fingers that we do not have bad connection, whether when Dan casts on Wednesday or starting next week. So tune in on Wednesday at 4 to hear Dan talk about some of his patented amazing little tweaks. Um, if you guys have questions this week, which I would consider to be a crunch week before submitting your milestone, definitely get in touch with us or come on Wednesday with your questions because Dan is definitely a great person to get those questions answered. And then looking ahead next week on Monday, I'll start talking about sort of this next stage that we'll be entering into of polishing and working on a game to publish online. So that's it for today. Thank you guys. I did, I don't know if Neural is still in the chat, Neural, but I will say if you are there that I do have your game project. I pulled it and downloaded or I pulled it to look to see if you had made any progress. And, um, we won't cut you off either. So if you're excited to continue working on the project, please do. Even past the deadline, we are excited to look at people's games. So the sky's the limit in what you work on when you're a part of our team. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great evening. Have a great Tuesday. And we will see you on the cast Wednesday at 4 o'clock. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's buggy discussion of some wonderful, wonderful prototypes. All right. Signing off, guys. See you soon.